Hello, my name is Ray Lopez, and I'm your City Council representative for District 6. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our program today. I'm very excited to have as my guest Maria Villagomez. She's the Director of Management and Budget, and our Sims Director, Mike Frisbee. We'll discuss the very important and recently adopted 2012 city budget, as well as the upcoming 2012 bond. Now I'd like to welcome to the show my first guest, Maria Villagomez. Maria, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Well, I know you made a long trip from upstairs to down here, but
Yeah.
at least you didn't have to weather the elements outside.
That's
but
right.
welcome to the show, and real excited to talk a little bit about what's going on with the 2012 budget. I know that a lot of people say, "Wow, that's a great undertaking that we do once a year when we develop that budget," and indeed it is. I've always told folks, we kind of battle through the summer to try to get our budget taken care of and done right. And if we do it right, really the city functions very, very well. And a lot of that has to do with your leadership, and we certainly appreciate that. The old adage around here is if it's not in the budget, it probably won't happen. So that makes it really, really important. Tell us a little bit about that budget. I mean, what
Sure.
was it that we adopted for the 2012 annual budget?
Yes, our 2012 budget was adopted in September. Our fiscal year began October 1. We have a fiscal year October 1 to September 30. So the budget that the City Council approved for 2012 is $2.2 billion.
That's with a B.
With a B, and a very large budget for our city, and is divided in two major components. We have an operating budget of $1.6 billion, and then we have a capital budget of $565 million.
Well, and then later on we're going to be talking about that capital budget with Mike Frisbee and
Yes.
others, but I know that really we divide that $2+ billion across a lot of different departments. How is it divided? I mean, tell us a little bit about the percentages that go to the different departments and
Sure.
where the majority of it goes.
Sure. Well, on the operating budget piece, the main operating budget is our general fund. And this is the fund that supports basic core city services to the community, including police, fire, parks, public works. So that budget is $948 million for 2012. And then we also have about $700 million in what we call restricted funds. And that includes, for instance, the airport, solid waste, stormwater fee, etc. But I would like to talk to you a little bit more about our general fund, which is that fund that a lot of people relate to. $948 million again. The main revenue sources are four. We get revenues from our CPS Energy. The City of San Antonio is the owner of the utility, and as a return on investment, we get about 14% of their gross revenues. So that's about $239 million. Another important revenue source for the city is sales tax. When we go out there and spend money, and now with Christmas coming up, it's good that we're spending money, good for the economy. So we receive a portion of those sales tax, and that's about over $200 million that we get on an annual basis. And then we have a property tax, which is something that our residents are very interested in. Of the total property tax bill that somebody pays, the city gets about 25% of that. The rest goes to schools and the county. So that's over $200 million as well. And then we have other revenues in the general fund, like fees for the use of our parks facilities, fines, for instance, and other revenue sources. So that is the majority of the revenue sources we have. And then we invest those sources in the critical services for the community. Police and fire are 61% of the total general
61
fund.
of the total.
61, actually 61.5%. And then we have public works and parks. So when you put together those four core services for the community, that is 75% of our general fund. So that's how we spend the majority of those dollars. And then we support other services such as animal care, our libraries, code enforcement, and then the administration of the city.
Well, no doubt that you have a big job and you do it very well. And I guess what you're talking about really is how we spend it. But I know that before we start to spend it, we kind of have to decide what direction we're going to take, how we're going to do it, and that kind of stuff. And that really talks about building that budget.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the input. And I know we get to talk about it starting typically in August. But by that time, we've really had a lot of dialogue within the city and even with the constituents. Talk a little bit about that process because it's incredibly important.
Sure. Well, the process really begins early in the calendar year. We have several venues for our residents to be involved. We have what we call the budget input box, and our residents can go to the city's website under the budget office and give us suggestions about the budget. And this is very critical for us, so we know and we hear from the community what's important to them. And they give us great ideas. They tell us how we can do things better, how we can be more efficient, maybe services that are no longer important to them. Very, very critical component. So we have that piece, and we also hear from the City Council. We have a goal-setting session in May and June where City Council develops the priorities for the budget. So with this input from the community, the input from the City Council, we develop what we call a proposed budget. This proposal goes to the community in the month of August. And then what we do is we do community budget hearings. We have 10 in total, 1 in each city council district. We develop a budget video to communicate to the residents what's in the budget. And then we ask them for feedback. As a matter of fact, this past year, we had great participation. We have over 600 residents that attended the 10 community hearings, and about 240 comments that we received.
Wow.
So very critical. We encourage our community to participate. It is very important for us to hear from them, and I know for you as well. I know your community hearing was very successful. We had really good participation. So when we get their comments, then we compile all the input and present it back to the council. And then council goes over the list of comments and ideas, and then they make amendments to the proposed budget. And then we finally adopt the budget. We also have a community budget hearing here in City Council chambers, open to everybody citywide, and people attend also and provide us with input. So very, very critical component for the community to participate.
Well, no doubt, and quite honestly, and I know you know this, most of us recognize that budgeting is really a year-round process.
Yes.
As soon as the budget is approved, we're already talking about what changes, what are we going to do for next year and that kind of stuff. And it is very important to get that input. I know in District 6, probably not much different than other districts, but very vocal. And I do listen to those folks that are in leadership positions with the HOAs, with the boards and commissions. I think are a very critical component of a level of expertise that the council, the offices use, and that kind of stuff. But I know that also the input boxes are really cool things. I think throughout my whole life, we always got to deal with suggestion boxes and the like, and sometimes if you put them in the right places, you won't get very many suggestions. So how do y'all do that? Where do you put them? How do you encourage people to go and stick their little suggestions in the boxes and that kind of stuff?
Sure. Well, in addition to having our budget input box online, we also have over 200 boxes located across all city facilities like libraries, community centers, learning centers, any city office or city council constituent offices. We have these blue boxes where individuals can fill out a form and give us their suggestions or ideas for the upcoming budget process. Again, they can do it online. We have some individuals that sometimes they email directly to the budget office, which is great. And we value every single suggestion that we get, and we evaluate it very carefully. We discuss it with our city departments and ask for their professional recommendation on those suggestions, and then we bring them to the city manager and then eventually to the city councils through the proposed budget.
Well, that's great. And unfortunately, we only have a couple of more minutes, and I wanted to talk about so many other things. I'm going to ask if now here on camera, will you come back and talk more about what's important to the city? That's the budget and what we do with it and all that kind of stuff. So in the last minute or so, can we talk a little bit about one of the things that's in the budget this year for brownfields and how and why we did that kind of stuff, and a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, brownfields is a new program that we're going to be addressing this 2012 budget. We added one position that is going to help us identify sites, potentially coordinate any cleanup efforts, and eventually our goal is to be able to redevelop this brownfields maybe for commercial use, or maybe if possible residential use. So this position will be very key in this budget process and will report the progress of their efforts to the council on a quarterly basis. So it's a great initiative for this year.
Yeah, I think it is, and certainly one that is very timely with everybody's concern about the environment, and I know that our mayor is very intent on having us have an incredibly green city, so that's the direction we're taking. Again, before we run out of time, tell us a little bit about where people can go out and look at information online perhaps, and that kind of stuff on the budget.
Sure.
Before we wrap up.
We actually have online on the Budget Office, City of San Antonio website, we have the entire budget document, which is about 600 pages, and is available online again. And we also have what we call budget highlights, which is just a high-level summary of the budget, and that is available online and also in all of our city facilities. So
Okay. Yeah, and do you guys measure what people tell you whenever they come on there, and even after the budget's been approved?
Definitely, yes. We want to hear from them. Again, they can submit their comments online or using the budget input box and tell us what they think about the current year's budget and whatever recommendations they have.
So once
for the
again, an
upcoming year.
ongoing process, I mean, a never-ending,
Year-round.
although we kind of focus in on the summer, but it's really a never-ending. Well, that concludes our time here. It went quickly, so thank you very much for being
Thank you,
here.
Councilman.
And for those youth, stay with us. We'll be back right after this short break, and we'll talk with Mike Frisbee from the Sims Group. Thank you.
Abandoned and lost. From the dark, cold streets of the city to a cage in the local shelter, to heaven, your lap.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. And we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
The magical thing about using energy wisely is that anyone can do it. Turn off lights. Use energy-saving light bulbs. And turn off computers and game systems when not in use. Make a change and we can really fly. Grab a grown-up and go online to energy.gov/kids.
Cuando la vida es así de dura, graduarse puede ser aún más duro, pero tú puedes ayudar a José y a los estudiantes en tu comunidad a sobreponerse visitando boostup.org.
Oye, Luis, ¿sabías que eres el plan de Elmo?
¿Tu plan?
Sí, la mami de Elmo dijo que si Elmo se enferma y no puede ir a la escuela, el plan es que Elmo se quede en casa con Luis y María.
Así es, ya tenemos ese plan.
¡Genial!
Es difícil predecir cuándo su niño estará muy enfermo para ir a la escuela. Así es que tenga un plan para que su niño se quede en casa hasta mejorarse.
Luis es el plan porque a Elmo cuidará. Luis es el plan porque a Elmo cuidará.
Para obtener más información sobre cómo prevenir la gripe, visite flu.gov.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back to our program. I'm your host, District 6 Councilman Ray Lopez. we're going to talk to Mike Frisbee, who's the director of Sims Department, who is here to discuss the city's role in the upcoming 2012 bond. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Councilman.
I think we've done this on a couple of occasions, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, and I really appreciate all the information. And more than anything, whether you know it or not, I mean, there's a lot of people that actually do listen to the show and are very interested in the kinds of things that we're doing at the city level, I guess because it affects them so much. What you do, and that was one of the things in our previous segment, or in one of the previous shows, that I said one of the first things that I learned was all the acronyms in the city. And SIMS was one of the first ones everybody said, well, you need to know what SIMS is all about. And I go, SIMS, what is that? Tell me a little bit, what is SIMS? What do you guys do?
It's Capital Improvements Management Services. So it's a department set aside to manage projects. So we work with the Parks Department to make sure their parks get designed and constructed, and Public Works for streets and drainage, and any facility projects. We'll work with the Fire Department to get fire stations designed and built, and so on. So that's primarily what we do, is get projects built.
So it's capital improvements. Now, my understanding is that it was kind of created when we did the previous bond, or the bond that we're wrapping up now, back in 2007, was basically to kind of manage those projects. And I guess that's the process we're going to use then for this upcoming 2012 bond. So let's talk a little bit about that. If you want to kind of give us a little bit of an overview of how we kind of pulled projects together for this upcoming bond. Sure. You know, how we're vetting them through the process, and that kind of stuff.
Sure. You know, right now we're looking at $596 million for this bond program. So the 07 bond program was $550 million. So this one's a little bit bigger, and we're proposing about 135 projects. Actually fewer projects than the 07 bond, but bigger projects this time. And so the staff, we've been working with multiple departments over the past couple of years to really look at what are the best projects throughout the entire city to make a big impact when it comes to streets and drainage and parks and facilities. And so the City Council, you guys divvied up the funds in those 4 categories, and we proposed some staff recommended projects and have been working through the public process. That's gone real well. You know, there's been about 130 people on these 4 committees, and we've finished that process now, and we're moving on to City Council with the recommended slate of projects.
Well, good. And I think a lot of folks, when we were talking about that process, were saying, wow, this is already, you know, decided, and it's already going to, you know, what good does our input do? But quite honestly, I think you can agree, a lot of the folks that have been involved in the process actually have been impressed that there's been a lot of dialogue. When it's when there's an issue that perhaps, you know, there's disagreement on, then city has been given a really good overview of the why, and then it's up to them to figure out what it is that we want to do. But understanding the why is so important, and I've gotten a lot of very positive feedback from your organization and others that are leading the bond process, and I think people are appreciating you know, the process in and of itself, because after it's all said and done, those are the folks that will determine, you know, the success of the city, and certainly bonds are a very important part of that financial process. Now, I know that we didn't just divvy this up, take the dollars, divide them by 10, and say, let's go do this.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how we divvied those up, and then, if you will, take a deep dive, because I think the folks that are listening would be somewhat interested in the stuff that's going into District 6 in particular.
Sure, you bet. You know, we look at the total city investment and make sure that's citywide. There's great needs throughout the city, and some areas have different kinds of needs than others. Some need more street work than drainage work, and some need parks work. So basically we're looking at the bond program, and then some of the other major programs, the Linear Creekway program, the Parks Maintenance program, and then we have a Public Works street maintenance program as well. So making sure that that's proportional throughout the city, and in the end it is, when you look at total investment throughout the city. And in District 6, we've got a lot of great projects that are lined up.
Yeah, because I know that some of the folks in the very beginning stages of the discussion immediately took the bond projects and looked at the totals and said, hey, District 6 isn't quite getting what everybody else is. What happened? I said, well, really, as you said, you know, really this is a total package, and we are, in other line items like linear parks, we are getting you know, certainly our fair share.
Sure.
However, I can also tell you, and maybe you can kind of validate this, the difference when you look at the total revenue sources, I think there's only a point or two difference between the district that gets the most versus the one that gets the least when you take all of the investments across the board into consideration. So let's talk about some of those projects and, you know, a little bit more granularity. You can comment on a few of them. I think the audience would appreciate it.
Sure. You know, we have, throughout the city, we have some projects that we call citywide impact projects. And in District 6, we have $2.2 million set aside for the animal care services to increase the kennel space at the 151 site and really improve the animal care for the city. So that's an important one. We have a number of streets projects in District 6 that are going to take care of some real congestion issues. Tezel Road, really the final segment of Tezel Road from Culebra to Timber Path. Couples Road, we have a couple of intersections there that need to be improved, and from Merida to Castroville Road. Ingram, we're very familiar with Ingram and the congestion that goes on there from Culebra to Mabe. And then, you know, in the 07 bond, we did a section of Marbach Road. Now we're going to be able to do the next segment of that. So these are high traffic areas, high congestion. We'll be able to get in there and get it widened out, get it improved to make traffic flow much better.
Great. Well, I know that one of the ones you mentioned just a second ago was animal care. And while that's listed as a citywide project, I know that in District 6, I mean, it's something that we take a lot of interest in because it is located in District 6, but it has such a tremendous impact. And the kind of work that we're doing with them, I think, is yielding a lot of progress. I know that recently they were talking about, you know, record numbers as far as live releases and the like. And I think as a city, and certainly the bond members, the bond committee members have kind of underscored that it's real important. That we want to continue to invest in those kinds of quality of life things and to look at them from a citywide perspective. And certainly streets and drainage are incredible. But there's some other ones that are, I think, from a quality of life perspective, are also very, very important relative to parks and things of that nature. I think we always want to say, well, we want bigger and better parks, but really we have to be kind of strategic as to where the needs are, as well as recreational facilities. Talk a little bit about some of the parks projects and that we've got slated for District 6.
Sure.
And kind of how we came to the conclusion that that's what we needed to do.
Yeah, you know, there's about 235 parks throughout the city, and every park could use some work.
Sure.
You know, somebody would like another amenity of some kind at a park. So we recommend.
You mean we're not any different than anybody else? No. There you go.
Every park could use some help.
Absolutely.
So, you know, in District 6, we're going to touch a lot of parks and improve a lot of them here, a whole slate. But one of the things that we identified with you and in your office is really a lack of recreational space in District 6. And so one of the things we're excited about is the $3 million set aside for recreational use to try to look and partner with another agency and create a great indoor space, some outdoor space, whatever it may be, to really provide some community recreation there.
Well, that's great, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion around that, and you know, clearly the numbers, the need, the growth in that area certainly underscores that, and it reminds me a little bit about, while it wasn't a bond project, we were able to open and get going a senior center. And everybody kind of, when I remember the numbers, my God, I hope we get 50 or so members a month, and I hope that the need is there. And indeed, when we spoke with at that time, I mean, the folks at the city, they kind of did the quantifying of the number of seniors that there were. They said, "Don't worry about it, you'll have plenty." Well, indeed, we have about over 2,500 members there. I suspect that our recreation center is going to have the same thing. We've got such a tremendous amount of growth,
right?
Such a large gap, that once we do this, it will validate its need. And I know that most of the folks, I guess all of the folks that I've talked to, are real supportive of it and anxious to see how we're going to get this thing rolled out. And really, when we talk about recreational facilities, almost at the same time, we have to talk about educational initiatives, if you will. And this is, I guess, kind of underscores the fact that the committee actually had the latitude or had the authority to kind of make some changes, because there's a component in there for a library, or right. We had talked about libraries. Talk a little bit about how that kind of evolved and the discussion around that, and the amount of money that we're going to be setting aside for a library site.
Sure. The library department recently completed a study to look at what are the needs for new libraries, and District 6, with all the growth going on out to the west, it was one of those areas around SeaWorld and so forth that showed a need for an additional library. So another exciting project is $1.4 million set aside to purchase property for a future library site. So we're going to be working with your office and the real estate folks to really search for a great piece of property to locate a future library. So that's another proposed project as well.
Well, we're looking forward to that continued dialogue. And while I know that it's not part of the bond project and those kinds of things, I know that, that we're doing a lot of work relative to linear parks, and certainly there's a long list of park projects, and maybe at a later time we can talk a little bit about those linear parks and how we pull all the big parks together with linear parks. And really, it really is a layering of facilities
system,
that ultimately creates that system of good quality of life kind of things for us. So I really appreciate you coming here, and I'm not going to let you off the hook. You're going to have to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more. We typically run out of time, and there's more things to talk about than there is time typically in the show, but thank you very much for being here.
You bet.
And thank you for tuning in. I'd like to once again thank my guests for taking the time to provide us with such great information regarding the 2012 bond and the upcoming 2012 budget that we were undertaking. I look forward to our upcoming shows, and until next time, I'm your City Councilman Ray Lopez, and thank you, San Antonio.
Really?
Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Today, we gather to recognize the selfless decision of one of the most influential women of our time. The woman who, after having one too many drinks, chose not to drive home buzzed. Here today to honor Rachel is the family whose lives she spared.
Abandoned and lost. From the dark, cold streets of the city to a cage in the local shelter, to heaven, your lap.
If you're looking for a new pet that your family will cherish every day, consider adopting from a shelter. Shelters are the best places to find a new pet. That's where you'll discover healthy, loyal, and loving animals, eager to become a part of your family. A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet, so bring home your new buddy today. To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org.
We are different. Society should aspire to be more like us.
Be part of the first class. Get energized. Get outside.
Hold on, guys. It's gonna get bumpy.
And get moving. Experience the power of physical activity. Join the movement at actionheroalliance.com.